In the last video, I showed you how to put graphics into your game, how to place them in a scene, and how to make them collide with one another and be affected by physics. Now in this video, we will look at how we can add some behavior to these entities and to these game objects. And for that, we go back to Assets, right-click, Create, Folder, and we create a Scripts folder. Now, strictly speaking, you don't have to do that. It would work otherwise too, but I like to keep things organized. So I create scripts in the Scripts folder. Now, if I right-click, Create, C# script, I will now name this Flappy Nerd. And I will select my nerd and drag this script on there. And now everything that I code into the script will affect this nerd person here. So let's jump in here and try to write some code. Now, what you can see here is those are two so-called functions. Now, we will dive far deeper into this, but what I want you to know now is this is basically the code that is executed when the game starts. This is executed every frame. So basically 30 to 60 times per second, usually. I mean, it determines how fast your computer is and how fast your game can run. Now, we can write something like this in here. Transform.position plus equals. And then we need to say we want to move the character by 1 to the right and 0 upwards. And then we use a semicolon to end this line of code. So this is already pretty fancy for you. What I do here is I say the position of my nerd will be increased by 1 to the right. So this is the x-axis and I will move it 1 unit to the right. And now I need to do something more in order to make it work on different computers. I need to write multiply it by time.delta time. This makes it so that it will move at the same speed on every computer, basically, no matter how fast it can run the game. So now let's go back to Unity and hit play. Now you can see it basically moves to the right, but it of course also falls down. So let's set the gravity scale to 0 and I will move it right here. So now let's hit play again. And you can see it moves 1 unit per second to the right. So I'm already quite happy with that. However, we definitely want to use our gravity still, but maybe a little bit less. So let's try with 0.3 gravity scale, and now it will fall down, but still move to the right. So this is already a very basic script that is working quite nicely. However, I still want something more. I want the player to be able to play this game, basically. So if the player presses space, the nerd should jump up, kind of like in Flappy Bird. And in order to do that, we need to code some more. So let us get into the script again. And now we do something that's called getComponent. And I will get the rigid body 2D component. And in here, I will say add force. And now I want it to move upwards. So I tell it vector2.up. And then let's just try like 1000. So this is just an arbitrary number that we should apply a force that tells the physics engine to move the player basically up. And if I hit play now, it should move very fast upward. Yeah, you can see it flew right off the screen. That's because it is executed every frame. Now, I don't want to execute this every frame. I only want to execute this when I press the space key. So I can now write something that's called an if condition, if, and then I can say the input dot get key down, and then I say keycode dot space, and I add some curly braces, and now this line of code is only executed the very moment I press the space key. Now let's see if this works. I hit play and it would fall down. Now I press space and it moves up. A little bit too much, I guess, so I probably need to scale this down to something maybe like 500. And you have to play around with these values to get something that works for you. Yeah, so it's still too much. And what I usually do at this point is I create so-called variables. So you can see it's kind of tedious to always go into the code, change this value and test it out again. So what I do instead is I create a variable. Now I create a public float, which is a decimal variable. So let's create a variable and I call it jump height. And I set it to 250 by default. And instead of multiplying by 500, I will multiply by jump height. And now back in Unity, we can see the variable shows up here in the inspector, and that's super handy for balancing my game. Now let's try something like a jump height of 100. So if I now hit space, yeah, that's far too low. Now let's set it to 250. And yeah, I mean, I jumped a little bit too high here. Let's try it again. And 250, I think, should feel, yeah, this feels all right. Now you can see here, we've got a little bug kind of here because now it collided with the wall and it is thrown to the left here. Now, to fix that, let's just set the linear drag to 1. And again, we will talk about this later. For now, I will also increase the gravity scale to 0.4. And now it already, I think this feels nice enough for me. Now, you can, of course, tweak these values for your own. And with that, we almost have got our Flappy nerd game finished. What we can see now is that the character moves out of the camera range pretty fast. So you can see the camera doesn't follow him. So we are very restricted in the levels we can build. Now, in order to do that, we just select the main camera and drag it onto the nerd. And that way it will move with the nerd. So if I hit now play, you can see the camera will follow the nerd around. So yeah, that's also quite neat already. Now there's one more feature I would like to add, namely to kill the player. Of course we need to kill the player, otherwise it would be boring. So let's select the player and double click this Flappy nerd script again. And if the player touches a wall, he should be killed, I guess. So let's write some more code. Now I write void on collision enter 2D. Visual Studio helps me here. So now I just want to say time.timescale equals to 0. This will pause the game. And what I also want to do probably is to hide the player. So I say get component renderer and I set it to disabled like this. So now the player will be hidden and then the game is paused. So let's go back to Unity. And if I now touch the wall, boom, the player is hidden and the game is paused. That's fine. This is our first game. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, you can create a little level in here. So like this, for example, you can just add a few more bricks in here, so the player needs to be a little bit better at this game. Unfortunately, I'm not the best player, of course. But yeah, you already have the template for your first Flappy Bird game. Now that was awesome, wasn't it? Now, I hope this video was useful in getting some kind of experience of what it feels like to work with C# and Unity. If you want to dive deeper into the rabbit hole, I highly suggest you check out the description below and click on the enroll button of my Udemy course. This is the highest quality course I've put out so far, and you can continue your journey on becoming an amazing programmer over there. However, be sure to click on the link in the description below, because if you click it, you will get the early adopter bonus where you get a hefty discount on the course. So I'm eager to seeing you over at Udemy.